The following presentation examines common questions about strategy in the American Civil War. Why did officers order seemingly disastrous charges, and why was the fighting so close? There are many examples of disastrous charges in the Civil War, ranging from regimental actions to entire divisions. Sometimes these daring charges worked, most famously with Chamberlain's charge down Little Round Top on July 2nd at Gettysburg. But oftentimes these charges were just disastrous, like the back and forth actions at the cornfield at Antietam. These decisions do seem entirely irrational on the face of it. For instance, why would Rhodes and G.B. Anderson move men out of defensive positions at Antietam's Sunken Road to rush incoming Union forces? The alternative seems more logical. Why not situate units on high ground and use long-range weapons to dislodge the other side from afar? After all, the Springfield and Enfield rifles could, varying by the experience of the soldiers, be accurate at 300 yards or even further in the hands of trained and experienced operators. A long-range action would seem to greatly reduce casualties while also successfully pushing away enemy forces. However, there is a simple logistical reason why an army could not utilize a distance strategy. The reality is that infantry units had cartridge boxes with 40 or 60 rounds. A sustained fire would drain ammunition very quickly. Artillery also would only have a few hours of firing before all the cannonballs would be expended. A distance firing action would not result in a decisive action before ammunition was run out. There are simple reasons why units were placed close to enemy positions on the field. There are topographical, logistical, and command reasons why fighting was so close and so terribly costly in the American Civil War. Let's start with topography. It's easy to look at a map like this and forget that the land is not flat like a sheet of paper. Let's take a look at a LiDAR image of this landscape. A subtle ridge, not even a hill, just a fold in the ground, can completely shield a unit from view from the enemy. No dramatic terrain is required for this kind of cover. The rise in the ground only needs to exceed the height of a person. Let's zoom back to the satellite image. The units here are shielded from view behind this ridge, unseen by forces to the east. Civil War generals actually used the land to completely hide portions of their forces. Units would be hidden within woods, behind ridges, or among cornfields, out of sight of the enemy, and could be thrown into action to surprise an approaching unit. Many times, an attacker was completely blindsided by hidden forces at close range. Because this kind of attack is meant as a sudden shock, the action would be, by design, very close and devastating. Civil War battles really were not like a game of chess, where each side saw the other's pieces. Movements were often meant to be hidden, and reserves were held out of the sight of enemy lines. Oftentimes, an attacking force is essentially going in nearly blind, not really sure how much enemy they are walking into. It was actually very nerve-wracking for generals to not see or hear anything happen for an extended period of time, because the stillness meant that an undetected body of enemy might be moving into position. An extreme example of the use of topography to shield units occurred at Gettysburg. Longstreet moved thousands of men behind Seminary Ridge, camouflaged behind the topography out of sight of Union eyes. It's actually quite amazing to think that thousands of men could move undetected like this, but with guides who had studied the land, units could snake through the landscape completely unseen. They then appeared on the Union left. The attack was meant to be surprising, sudden, intense, and decisive. Another reason Civil War battles were fought so close, resulting in disastrous charges, is a simple matter of logistics. As stated earlier, Civil War cartridge boxes might hold 40 or 60 rounds. If a soldier is firing 3 times a minute, his ammunition will quickly deplete. A 10-minute action might leave only 10 rounds remaining in a 40-round cartridge box, and the larger 60-round cartridge box will be half empty after 10 minutes of heavy action. It's entirely possible for a unit that is engaged for 15 or 20 minutes to be out of ammunition. So if a unit is out of ammunition, but they have an enemy on their front, the only recourse they have is to charge forward with bayonets. Chamberlain's movement down Little Round Top is a classic example. Okay, so a unit is out of ammunition. Why not just fall back instead of committing to a potentially disastrous charge? Well, this is where the reality of logistics, running out of ammunition after 15 or 20 minutes, intersects with the reality of military service. Each officer is under orders. A regiment, brigade, or division has been given orders, which may say, "Hold this position." General Grant's orders to certain divisions at Shiloh, for instance, included the verbiage, "Hold this position at all hazards." This means the brigade or division is under direct orders to remain in position regardless of the cost. So if a brigade has been engaged heavily for 20 minutes or longer, and no reserves or supply wagons are available, the officers are left with few options. A withdrawal would violate their direct orders to hold the position at all hazards or all costs. On the other hand, they can't just stand in line taking fire from enemy combatants when they can't fire back. So the only choice is to fix bayonets and charge. Finally, there may be also a psychological reason for a charge. A unit may have received terrible fire or be significantly outnumbered. A charge here, though desperate, is the result of a situation that is already desperate. Here, although seemingly counterintuitive, the tactic is psychologically based. It's a shocking action that might throw the enemy off balance. Rhodes, after losing the sunken road at Antietam, threw 150 men against approaching Union lines. While the charge was entirely desperate, a last-ditch effort to hold off a collapsing position, it did have the effect of convincing the blue lines to halt. The psychological impact succeeded. If the enemy is daring enough to charge, they may have more fight in them than initially thought, or they may have undetected reserves coming up behind them. Another factor that required both sides to get so close was smoke. If a regiment of 300 men are firing constantly for several minutes, a smoke screen will impede their line of sight, and the unit will need to advance through the smoke to ensure that they are still facing in the right direction, and to ensure that a friendly unit has not advanced into their firing zone. Smoke is a big reason why combatants would end up so close. Civil War battles involved incredibly close fighting that resulted in terrible losses. While many decisions may seem bewildering today, such as charges, in the context of logistics, command orders, and topographical factors, these actions were the only apparent options to the officers present, given the conditions on the field.